Tuesday, March 16th at 6:05 p.m. and I call the Finance Committee meeting to order. The first agenda item is meeting minutes from the meeting of March 8th. Can I get a motion? Second. Hold on, you gotta unmute. So
I make a motion to approve it.
And I'll second.
What is that?
It's just feedback because we're all in the same room.
Well,
Okay, so I gotta take a roll call vote. So Ted?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tom said aye. We're trying to admit him now. Okay, and Peter?
O'Malley, aye.
And O'Malley, aye. And Karen, aye, so it's unanimous. Next is the meeting minutes from the meeting of March 9th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Ted? David?
Aye.
Tommy?
Aye.
Pete?
O'Malley, aye.
And Darren, I'm sorry, Darren.
Us is aye to both motions.
Okay, now the meeting minutes from March 11th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from March 11th.
Tamika, that was a second by Pete.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Ted? Nope, it's not releasing.
Purcell, aye.
Okay, David?
Aye.
Tommy? Pete?
Aye.
Darren?
Ross, aye.
Karen, I unanimous. Okay. So since we have department heads here, we're gonna do, Becky, we're gonna do you, nope, wait a second, we're gonna do
Harold.
the Board of Assessors first.
Harold, you're up.
Okay, go ahead, Harold.
Yes, actually, I'm going to defer to Kelly. She has the budget, right? Kelly, you're on mute.
Yep. Okay, what would you like to start with? Well, basically, I don't know if you have it in front of all of you, but we have pretty much a small increase in our budget. And part of it is the administrative assessor. Candace had came on board last year. When she had come on board, she come in probably end of May, mid to end May.
Yeah.
And she started off with 23? She was hired at $15.71 an hour for 28 hours a week. And then since received a COLA increase with the July fiscal 21's COLA increase. So we were looking at stepping her up to step 2 on the OAD2. We were going to step her up to 2 to 1675, I think it was. Yep, 1675.
1709.
What's that?
We have $17.09.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, because of the 20. Okay, yeah. That was an increase there because of the COLA from last year. So 1709, correct. I see that. Yep. So times the 28 weeks times the 50, I mean, the 28 hours times the 52 weeks was the 24,000 that you see there. So that was a small increase there. And then contractual increases within the line item 5,200. You'll see that the VEDAR software seems to be a level funded line item. The Vision user software went down a tad. The RRG group went up a tad, 2%. The tax map maintenance went up a tad. The web GIS support and the hosting stayed level funded, in the registry plans, that was stayed at 75. So that was our 5,200 line item. And the other two line items of 5,400 and 57, we were asking for level funded again at the $830 each line item. And then 750 for the 5,700. And we're really a bare bones on that, on all that. As you can see, toner is $330. We use approximately 2 toner cartridges a year. The paper, the letter size paper, 11 by 17 reams. We do use that a lot for sending out the chapter applications, as well as the statutory exemptions and things to the taxpayers. If we don't have to do that, we're not obligated to do that. It's just been a service that we tend to do, and a lot of the elderly really appreciate it, because that way they're it reminds them, because a lot of them don't remember the time that they're due. So that's very helpful for them. We went file folders. We had $50 there. We dropped that to 0. Supplies, looks like there's a very small increase from 236 to 250. The printing on the envelopes did go up a little bit, and that's because of the fact that there was an increase, I guess, in the envelopes required for the mailings for the exemptions, 3 ABCs, formal lists, and certifications. Again, not something that we have to do. However, again, it's just a good service for the taxpayers to receive those.
So these are pre-printed, like letterhead envelopes kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
What do you guys see for your other charges line? I see you haven't spent much this year. Are you looking to see if there's going to be any live training next year?
that's what we're hoping for. Yeah, we're hoping to get Candace some training, like the Massachusetts assessors usually have a lot of good informational courses. It's current affairs type of things. So things that are changing, things that are happening or going to be happening. It gives her a good insight, especially being very, very new and still a little green. She's doing phenomenal, but she's still green. A lot to learn within the department. That would be helpful with that, absolutely. So that's typically, it's actually a lower end of a number, but it gives her a good handle, a good amount of money to do a few of them anyhow.
There wasn't a lot of training this year?
Not a lot at all because of COVID, that's correct.
Any questions? Any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Kelly and Harold. Thank you very much.
Hi,
Okay.
you're welcome. Have a great
Thank you
night.
all.
You too.
Good night. Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Karen, can I make that comment? I asked you and I forgot before we started to make a brief comment about a couple of things.
No, we're gonna do that at the end after we get all these departments handled. Yep.
Um,
All right, so Becky?
Hi.
Hi, Becky.
Is everybody ready?
As ready as we're gonna be.
All right, I'll wet my whistle. So, can you all hear me well?
Mhm.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna do the treasurer collector budget first.
Yes, please.
My salary is contractual. This is the second year of my contract, which brings that up to 82,000. For the assistant salary, she is on the top step, so there is no step increase in that. It's just a 2% increase, which is the 49,656.69. That's for 37 and a half hours per week at OAD 5, step 4. The $1,000 additional salary amount, I just want to make sure I'm matching what you guys have.
Yep.
Is for my certification as a certified municipal treasurer and collector. And that's a bylaw that was accepted. Let's see, secretary salary, we eliminated that position last year. That was I think it was an $11,000 cut about that we did last year. It's just myself and Lisa in the office, and I can say that it's very, very slim with just us two in the office. We're trying to do a few things that helps us out. We continued with the lockbox service. I know we didn't get funding for it last year, but the water and sewer did pick up a part of that. We were able to go out to bid and found a bank that is doing it for us for nothing. So we just
Nice.
transferred, we opened a brand new account with them, but of course that all comes with training and transition. So we've got that on our plate to do as well. But the bank that we were using, the lockbox, it was $3,000 that was in our budget for last year that got cut. It
Yep.
was going to go up to $6,000 for this year. So we opened a new account with People's Bank that has offered the lockbox service for nothing. And it is a service that we really, with two of us in the office, we can't do without.
No, I agree.
So for under purchase services, that the increase is about $600, and that is for an increase in the cost for our payroll service that we had additional W-2s this year. We have more people that we were paying. This year, it looks like it's going to be about $5,400 for the total year. Last year, it was at $5,800 because we had a few less employees this year because, like for W-2s, because of recreation not operating over the summer, which usually brings in a lot of employees. So, so that $600 increase is basically for the increase in the cost of the payroll service funding.
Okay.
Supplies, we left the same along with other charges. The other charges is for training and the UMass school, which is mandatory to keep my certification. And it's basically the only place that treasurer collectors can get training like the assessors do at their school over in UMass as well. So hopefully this year they didn't have it. Next year, we're hopeful that they do.
When is this school usually held?
August.
August, September, yep.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any questions? Okay,
Tax title.
Yep.
Completely level funded from last year. We did foreclose on quite a few properties last year, or FY20, we had a successful auction in November. We're still working on closing on one of the auction, the 259 Main Street, which everybody's probably familiar with.
Yep.
It's been a thorn in my side since I've been here. We foreclosed on it a year ago, March 12th, and we did put it up for auction, and it sold for $220,000. They've run into some title issues with it. So they are required, because the property was conveyed to another owner, the buyer wants to ensure that both the owner and the business that it was conveyed to are on the foreclosure decree from the land court. So we're actually going back to the land court, reiterating that. But the buyer still says he wants to buy it once those things are all cleared up, so that he's ensured that he will get it. So I hope with this budget, I'm continuing to move forward. It's just it's a long, slow process in tax title to get things through the land court to foreclose and then to finally do the sale. But every penny helps to get all of the money that comes in from tax title, and the foreclosure basically goes to, not the foreclosure, but the sale goes to free cash. So.
That goes to the general fund that way through free cash. Yep.
Right.
And I know all of us here, we're very pleased to see the numbers going down instead of up.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think when I started, the total in tax title was getting close to almost $1 million. So I think we've got it down to 500, 600,000 or something, somewhere around there. So it's slow, but coming along. So I love
Slow but steady. We're happy with slow but steady.
Yeah, that's right. It's just the turtle wins the race, right?
Yep.
So, or the Tuttle does. Sorry, they're gonna put a little humor in budget. So that's tax title. Any questions?
Any questions, guys? Oh, hold on one second. Tommy's got one.
Okay. Becky, is there a chance we can get an updated listing of the,
Yep.
what you usually have given us with all the things listed on it for tax title?
Yep. Yep.
I think that the last one we got was quite some time ago.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll send it out tomorrow with.
And I have one other request with that. Can we
Yep.
get it without all the highlights across the line? Because there's a lot of, when it gets copied, there's a lot of shaded lines, and then some of them are really dark. They're tough to read. Can we
Okay.
do it without.
All right, yep. I think I highlighted it because it was somebody that was on a payment plan or something, so I wanted it to stick out as to why.
Whatever, but it's something so, as we get older, the eyes are getting a little.
I totally understand.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Karen, one quick question.
Sure, Darren.
When do you think you're gonna, Becky, maybe it's just purely speculation. When do you think you're gonna have 259 behind you?
So the attorney, which actually he's doing this land court work. We're not having to pay for it because it was something that he thought he had addressed during the foreclosure. The last email update he sent me, he'd said it to get it back to land court, change the name, have him foreclose on it again. He's said 3 to 6 months. So I don't know. I mean, my response back to him was I was hoping to have it in before June 30th, but so it's cutting it close. If it's 3 months, maybe. If it's 6 months, it'll be in next year's. But we
Okay.
did. I mean, there is a couple, at least 150. I can give you an update too as to on the foreclosure sale that we did have. We probably brought in about 150 on the other parcels that we sold. 150,000.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other tax title questions?
I don't think so. I think you're all set to move on to postage.
Postage. What did I do with postage? The, let's say, purchase services, the bulk mail permit went up to $480 in FY20, so I increased that just a little bit. Postage supplies, there was a increase in rates in January of 2021 from, we used metered mail in the office, and it was at 50 cents, it went up to 51 cents in January. Plus, we're actually mailing more bills with more residents and that type of stuff. So it's a mild increase for postage. Let's see. How much was it? $22,000. Any questions?
Anybody have anything to say? All right. So
Machine and paper.
machine and paper.
Oh, I didn't do paper. The paper part.
It's right after postage.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yep.
I flipped too many. Level funded paper.
Okay.
Oh, on postage, actually, too, I just wanted to say under purchase services, the meter, the Pitney Bowes meter that's in the community hall, the lease expired this year. So we're actually looking at getting a new machine, and the lease is coming in at maybe like $20 a quarter less. And we don't have to pay the fee to, because there was like a $20 fee to refill the postage in the meter that we were paying. So it's a lesser fee. I can adjust the numbers, but it's probably maybe $100, $200 or something like that would adjust the purchase services line.
If
So
you
once
could,
that-
if you could send that to us, that would be very helpful, because when we're looking for what we gotta make, it's gonna make a difference.
Okay. So that was that. I just wanted to touch on that. Machine and paper, that's level funded. I seem to find all the sales at Quill for the cases of paper. And trying to keep that as low as possible. Nothing earth shattering in there.
Nope. Any questions? Okay. Then we go to retirement of debt.
Okay. So you can see, I don't know if you have the same, I'm hoping you have the same thing I do. There's a reduction just by way of all the debt being paid off of about $60,000.
Yep.
I have, let's see, on one of the detailed sheets, let's see, one of the debt excluded items is the Rutland Heights land.
Yep.
The balance on that is $280,000. If some of the sales that they're talking about goes through, hopefully we could pay that off. It is debt excluded, so it doesn't have a direct impact on our tax rate. But I had budgeted $56,000 because this year is our 10th year of renewing that bond. So we would have to do some sort of permanent financing, like a state house loan for 5 years. So I had budgeted $56,000 to pay that debt down with the permanent 5-year loan note. And I did reach out to because of our financial situation, I reached out to our financial advisor to just kind of take a look at things, see if there's anything. A lot of the USCA loans, they were 40-year notes to start with. We're down to maybe about 22, 23 years remaining on them. If we were to, the interest rates are kind of high, but if you refinance, you can do general obligation bonds of this type for 20 years. So we'd have to get the we'd have to shrink if, until we hit that 20-year mark, we could refinance them for 20 years, but that increases, instead of spreading it out over 23 years. So she is reviewing everything and looking to see if there's anything that we can refinance at this time that would save us money next year. And I mean, usually with debt, when you refinance, it's a long-term savings on the interest of the loan. So you don't get the immediate bang for your buck in the year that you're refinancing. But I will get back to you when I was hoping she would have an answer for me. But I know a lot of people are refinancing right now because of the low interest rates. So we're looking at all of the debt and seeing what the best way is to move forward with it. So.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a question. I think I probably know the
Oh, no,
answer
no,
to
no, you're still muted.
it.
Who's that?
It's more of a question probably for Ron. This decrease of 59,000 is already figured into the overall budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the budget, everything you're looking at is in the budget summary and figured into the budget. So everything in the budget book is in the budget summaries, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have done a really good job. I mean, over the last few years, because when I started the budget, the debt was pretty high. So haven't taken on anything new. We've been paying things off and kind of, we had a few, I'm looking ahead here. There's some water and sewer debt that's falling off. That's of course not included in these numbers. The water and sewer is another animal. But we have some, let me look at the amount, like a land piece that's coming off in 2025. We have the Naquan renovation excluded that's coming off in 2023. So we're, there are more debt in the near future that's coming off. So it's something, for CIPC or whatever to look at, where we're at if we want to invest in some more infrastructure and that type of stuff and take on debt, because you want to try and keep it at an even keel instead of letting it all drop off and then putting it all back on again. So we're at that point where those are some decisions that could be made. Any questions on debt?
Think you're all set? Benefits and insurance.
Okay. I had a lot of debt paperwork. Wait a minute. I got schedules. Excuse me. All right. Need another sip. Okay. Benefits and insurance. I'm just going to look at so I can go down the same list that you guys have. County retirement is a big increase, as you can see. What they did this year, over the last few years, they were using, they take a snapshot in time of the retirees that we have and how many are active, how many are to be retired, how many are disabled, retired, and that type of stuff. And the last few years, they've been using January 1 of 2018. This year, they took another snapshot, so it's January 1st of 2020. And the numbers of active members versus retired members and disabled members and all that stuff, and the inactive members actually went up, and the salary ranges went up with that snapshot at time. It's a big actuarial study that they do to come up with these numbers. So we had, and a lot of other towns as well had some pretty significant increases for Worcester County. But that's kind of, I think, is what's driving it. It's a more updated actuarial study, where the other one was actually 3 years old. So, and the 775, 974 doesn't include the 2% increase that decrease that we get if we pay the entire amount on July 1. So that's that. Insurance and benefits. Number, let's see, what number do you have in front of you?
891, 331.
Okay, so that was using an estimate of a 9% increase. The increase actually came in at, with no plan changes, came in at 6.8%. So that and if we make no changes and use the 6.8%, it brought the budget down to 871, 255. So we are currently, we had a meeting with the Insurance Advisory Committee on the beginning of March. And Maya, who is our provider for Blue Cross Blue Shield, made some plans change suggestions that we could put into place and that would reduce one of them, which is very interesting and not too painful, would be adding a deductible to our insurance plan because we don't have a deductible right now. There are co-pays, but there's not a deductible. It would be a deductible for an individual of $250 and for a family, a max of $750. It would bring the increase down to 0.93% instead of 6.8.
So the answer is here, circle this one, because this one will be, we're hoping will be revisited before we're at town meeting, so.
Right, the 891 number that you have will definitely be lower, at least if we make no changes, it's going down 871. If we make this change to add a copay, add a deductible to our insurance plan for the employees, it would bring the budget down to 833.
So right now, mark down 871, 255 and highlight it, because if we do change it with the IAC, this member may come down another 40 grand, but we're not there yet, so.
So,
Well, I would just say that you should implore the IAC to look at everything because it's a really tight budget year.
Already done, Karen. They understand, and we'll be having those conversations as we go along.
yeah, and I did to kind of do a little bit of research that deductibles are really commonplace now with a lot of the health insurance plans. And it's not a deductible for every service. If you go to your preventive maintenance doctor, you're not paying, the deductible doesn't apply there. It's for MRIs and ER visits and that type of stuff. You have to pay, at least you pay the first $250 and then the rest of it is covered through the copays and whatnot with the plan. So we still find, bless you.
Thank you.
We still are at 75-25, so the town pays 75% of the benefits and the employee pays 25%. So the 6.8% increase is on their premium as well. So that they weren't really happy with that either. So we're really looking at what we can do to save them and the town. So. The dental insurance did come in at a 0% increase, so that I think that's in the mix of the 870 or 891, wherever we're at, 833. I got so many. It's a moving target, this health insurance thing is right now. So we will settle on a number and move forward. The other piece that's in there is the flexible spending that we have. Plan that we have that the town contributes $150 to each employee that enrolls in it too. So that's all built into that 870 number. The life insurance, let me see, what was that, an increase from last year? Just a little bit of, I think it's 3.
No, it went down. It went down.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've got less people involved enrolled than we did. Another piece too is we have, these numbers also include one additional person, just as a buffer.
Okay.
Just in case somebody, because if somebody loses their insurance with their spouse loses their job and they lose their insurance, then they have to come on our plan. We have built in one additional enrollment that just to cover us in case somebody needed to enroll in the middle of the year.
And you have them in as a family, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So that's about, like, for health insurance, a family enrollment is about $17,000 a year.
Yep.
So. All right, life insurance, I think we have less people, but that also includes an additional person.
Okay.
And Medicare, we're running pretty much on target for FY21, which we had budgeted 73,000. I built in, I took the expense that we had for FY21 and built in a 3% COLA on that for the increase in salaries. And that's basically the difference. I just increased it by 3% because that's like overall, it's 1.45% of everybody's salaries that are out there. So. Any questions on those?
So the question I have is on the unemployment. You have $7,000. Is that what it is for every one employee who goes out on unemployment?
No. So what we do with unemployment is we have been putting away $7,000 a year. It goes into a trust fund because we're a reimbursable. I don't know if you need the explanation of that, but we don't pay a percentage of our salary. Like that'd be a contributory employer. We're reimbursable. So every claim that's like if somebody files for unemployment, we pay that directly. So we fund $7,000 a year. It kind of goes into our trust funds and we're building up the balance there until we have to pay something out. So I want to say there's probably $20,000 or $30,000 in there right now because we've had claims this year, but those have been covered under the CARES Act funding. We haven't expended anything out of the general fund under unemployment. We've covered it all through the CARES Act. So the 7,000 is just a building in case we get a claim or in case, in case we need to lay somebody off, which things don't look up. We're looking that way, but.
Okay. Any questions? I think the last thing is you have liability insurance.
That's under me.
That's
Okay.
right.
It's not on the agenda, but that's under my office.
Okay.
And I've been working with Maya. I've had numerous phone calls with Maya. It's based on actual claims.
That's okay, Ron, if it's not on, I just saw it's in the same bucket as all of hers, so I want to make sure that we
Right.
weren't. So, yep,
It's
Okay,
not on the agenda though.
yeah, that's fine. It's just because it was on the same bucket, that's the reason why.
Yep. I understand. That,
Any other questions for Becky? Okay, thank you very much, Becky, appreciate it.
All
Thank you,
righty.
Becky.
Take care.
Okay,
where would you like to go next?
well, the Historical Commission. So that's Peter.
Okay, please bear with me. This is my first time doing this. I'm kind of a greenhorn. I've never been to one of these meetings. So basically, as far as the budget for the Historical Commission itself, it's pretty much a volunteer organization anyway. My understanding, I can't remember where I heard this, but I know I heard it from somebody,
Me.
pretty credible source, whoever it was. Apparently, we were budgeted $250 for this fiscal year, 21.
Yep.
Okay. And I guess my one question with that would be, and we were all wondering as a commission, is there any possibility that that $250, if we don't spend it, can we transfer that over, carry it over to 22?
No.
Okay. So we would have to, whatever it is, we'd have to spend it this year. We are looking at probably using that for a historical marker for the central tree. Other than that,
So that's what you're using next year's budget?
I'm sorry,
Is that what you'll be using next year's budget for?
we could put it in there that way too, if you want. It's up.
I'm just trying to figure out what the 250 for you said central tree. I'm just wondering, is that this year or next year?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Hold on.
Karen, I think Tom has to mute so that there isn't feedback.
Okay, so now it'll be better.
There we go.
So is the 250 for the central tree marker from this year's budget or next year's?
Well, I was just told there were we had $250 and we voted to use it for a historical marker for central tree. And that was for 21. The $250 was for FY21.
Okay.
Generally, Karen, just generally what the commissions use this money for is posting ads for meetings and notices and things like that. That's usually why, I mean, it's a small dollar amount, but that's usually what commissions use it for.
Okay, I wasn't even aware of that. We've been doing everything, ever since I started as the chair here, we've been doing everything over Zoom and everything's been online. And so this is.
A number of occasions, boards have to post things in the newspaper for public hearings and things like that. That's generally what this money is. That's why mostly every commission is very, very small dollars. And it's just for those kind of minor type items. That's what the money is for.
So this is just kind of a buffer then.
Yeah,
And
it's
we
used
would-
when you, like, if there's some, God forbid, some big historical issue came up and you had to notify public and stuff to come and you had to take out a newspaper ad or things like that. That's the purpose of this, that allows you to continue having your meetings and post proper notice for something that the public was involved in.
Okay, that's good to know. So that would be something that, for that purpose, for that particular purpose, that we would still have for next year then.
That's why it's there, yeah.
Okay. Now, would it be, I don't know if it would be kosher for us to use that toward the historical marker since we didn't need it, or just let it go for this year?
It's generally not the intention. I don't know if anybody cares for such small dollars, but that's generally not the purpose of it.
Okay.
Peter, I'm gonna
Yes.
tell you, we're in a very tight budget year.
Yep.
So every little bit everyone can do would be very much appreciated, because that goes in, if you don't spend it, it goes into free cash and we might be able to fund something in the fall. So.
Okay.
I'm saying
And
is
that
every.
So I guess that kind of leads me to the next thing, and I don't know where we are in the process. I've passed this along to the CIPC and the Select Board, but the Woodhouse does need a new roof, and I believe we're going to need to be putting an article in for a town meeting on that.
Truthfully, that wouldn't be involved here tonight, Peter. That's probably
Okay.
gonna be, if anything, a free cash issue or some other source of funds, but it's not going to be operating budget money.
So ideally, that $250 would probably be best sent to the free cash for the purpose of the
Yeah.
Woodhouse then.
Well, and we would be involved, but we won't be involved until after the select board places it as a warrant article.
Okay, so the Select Board places that as a warrant article.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
After approval of the capital improvement committee. So you first need to we got to talk about getting the money approved from the capital improvement committee first, and then the select board would post it or put it on the warrant, but that's the first step.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ron. Pardon me for, like I said, I'm new with this.
No, you did fine. It's okay.
That's okay. We were all new ones, so believe me, we've all been there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, guys? All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right,
Karen?
thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Karen, Mike Sullivan is joined from the RDIC, so.
yeah, hold on one second.
Karen, on that one there, if. All right, I'll hold my comment till after.
Okay. We're gonna do RDIC. Yeah, it's in the front. It says Development Industrial Commission. Okay, Mike.
Good evening.
Hi. Okay, you want to go through your budget with us?
Sure. Well, I think the only budget item I have is I'm asking for $2,000 for secretarial services, which is up a little bit from last year. And by way of explanation, we, as all of you know, have an active project that we're trying to develop at the Heights property that is requiring more frequent meetings of the RDIC, and even more importantly, meetings of the what's called the HPDD Review Board, which is the how do I explain this? It's the ZBA of the HPDD site. So all I did was plug in what I kind of guesstimated the number of meetings would be times, where did my friend, my friend Tamika, who's hiding behind the town seal. I'd much rather look at Tamika than the town seal. But all I did was add what I guesstimated the meetings might be. And I have no way of knowing any better than anybody else does. You know, this is new territory for not only the RDIC, but for the town. So I picked a pretty conservative number, and I hope that we can stay within those that budget.
Anybody have any questions? So Mike, there are no other funds that this builder has given you that you could pay those out of? Like a deposit that they gave us, could we use
Well,
that funds?
I'm sorry, Karen. I think what you asked, are there funds available from the applicant? And Ron, you got to help me because I may get the terminology wrong here, but we got together, Ron and I did, with the town accountant and set up a 51G, 53G?
53G.
53G account where the applicant is now paying, you know, whatever fees are appropriate. And we're able to use those fees for instance, we've had public hearings, Telegram and Gazette advertising. Legal has evaluated some of, you know, the documents. Those items will be paid. I guess the best analogy I can use for you folks, I think, is to be reasonable. It's been a long time since I've been on the planning board, but it's the same way the planning board uses 53G accounts for individual subdivisions. We're doing the same thing with Harbor Classic Homes on their project for the appropriate items.
So this, I know that the planning board uses part of their revolving fund to pay for part of their secretary. So I was wondering if there were any of those funds available to help offset this increase.
Well, the answer to that is, Karen, I don't know. I didn't realize the planning board was doing that. Is it, I guess it is reasonable to say that if it weren't for the Harbor Classic Homes project, we would not need the secretarial fees. So yeah, I guess it's worth discussing and evaluating. I don't know how they a proportion or a portion, the dollars to the each individual project. So I guess, yeah, I think that's a reasonable discussion. I guess I got to get together with Ron to discuss how or perhaps Norm Anderson, how do they, appropriate the funds to, if a developer comes in and talks about his subdivision at a planning board meeting, how do they decide how much of what percentage of that goes towards, that project? I don't know how they do that. So
The HPDD meetings are only right now for Harbor Classic Homes right now. Yeah.
I would, that's probably a fair assessment. Right now they are, but they haven't been, Karen, because, we've had a solar project going on at the same time. So, they've it's been kind of convoluted. It's probably now going to be much clearer. So in the future, that's probably a fair thing to look at.
Right, going forward, we're looking into next year, so that's.
Yes,
nice.
yes.
Okay, yeah, I would say the best person to get with is Ron and then Dan, the accountant, because then they can explain exactly how they have to get that
So
done.
Karen,
Yeah.
Karen, a couple of comments here. First of all, when we, this is the only board and commission that's not level funded. And the reason I didn't level fund this with Mike is because, we've got a huge project that the sale of that asset's about $1.3 million. So we wanted to make sure we had the services we need to get through the project. The first part of the question, Mike, here, and thinking about this is that a lot of the I always screw up these initials, HPDD, I guess is the right initials. A lot of this work is going to be done, I would think, prior to July 1st. But how much work do you expect after July 1st? Because we're now talking about the fiscal 22 year budget. So I don't think we would need the full increase because a lot of the work will be done prior to July 1. Is that correct?
Yeah, in my world, I kind of deal with, an engineering brain, and I don't like to guess. So, yeah, it probably is. But if you ask me to quantify it, I don't know how to do that. So, I was very conservative in the $2,000 number. Do I think that'll be spent, before July 1st? No, I don't. But the other comment I want to make, Ron, in addition to the $1.3 million, then the obvious recurring revenue to the town is the tax value for who knows, between 88 and 150 senior housing units at, values of $300,000 a piece.
So Karen, to directly answer your question, is that I think most of the money we're going to have to probably find for the fiscal year 21, the one we're in, a big chunk of it, we're going to have to use. The 53G has been set up, and we put some money into that account already. So my guess is that we could probably lower this back to last year's level, but me and Mike are going to have to work to take it out of that 53G account. And if not, frankly, we'll have to find another way, because one way or another, we have to pay this bill. It's just basically paying Tamika to do the minutes. So either it's something we work out at this end of this year's budget and moving money around, or dealing with it through the 53G account for next year. But I think we could probably move it out of here and deal with it in another way.
Well, just call me Mr. Conservative. The last thing I want to do is have expenses that we can't pay for and have to then deal with the timing of a town meeting, whether it's, wait to the fall town meeting or whatever, that just becomes a big mess. So that's why I was very conservative in that $2,000 number. If that's going to cause lots of heartburn, and you want to kick it out, and we'll, deal with it. I don't want to sound like a wise guy, but I just want you to, be on notice that we do have additional secretarial costs that I think, Karen, it's a very good point that we could perhaps, get them to pay for some, but there could be other, unexpected, again, this is a first time for the town, certainly a first time for the RDIC, unexpected expenses that I can't anticipate make me awful nervous.
Karen, this is frankly, I would say that, God, I don't think it'll come to this, but even the last resort, taking a couple of grand out of reserve would make sense for this because, obviously we need to do this. It's important to get the project done. So, but I think there's a multitude of ways to deal with it at the end of this fiscal year and into next. So not over about it if it comes out of this account.
Yeah, Mike, we're being extremely conservative this year because we have a very large budget deficit that we have to cover. So
Understood.
we're looking at everything, so.
Yeah, no, understood. And believe me, I'm not trying to cause any additional heartburn. I understand that. But I just want everybody to realize that, this isn't pie in the sky. I'd rather give you a number and have you say, you know what? We're going to do something different. At least I was just going to say something that wouldn't have sounded right. At least I told you so, but I didn't mean it to come out that way. But you know what I'm saying? I at least put it on the table.
And let us know your needs. So
I'm
I
sorry?
work with Ron and Dan to see about the ability to use the 53G, because that would be helpful.
Sure. Yep. Happy
This
to
is
do it.
one- Mike, this is when I commit to you. We'll make sure it's funded and we'll take care of it. Just a matter of how, but I'll work with you to structure that. We'll figure it out.
Okay. And I'm happy to do whatever's the most cost-effective way to get it done.
Yep. And Karen, I purposely let this come here so you would understand what's going on. It was just a kind of a way to kind of acknowledge what's happening with that project. That's all.
Yeah, there's just, the project is probably in as much of a state of flux at this very second as it's been in the last 6 months. And I expect in the next week or two, it's gonna, come back to ground zero and we'll, I'll feel a lot better about, where we're headed.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You. Ron, I don't see anybody from the Agricultural Commission.
Yep. Again, these commission budgets are all level funded.
That's okay, we can go over it later. Board of
Okay.
Appeals, is there anybody here for the Board of Appeals? Okay, so Norm, you're up. Planning Board.
Yeah. I guess first of all, I'll make a couple of comments later on, but I think I'm gonna let Ron explain, because if you look at the difference between 21 and 22, there is a significant difference, but there isn't really.
Yep. This is going to be a debate, Karen, we've been waiting for, so we're going to have it tonight.
Yep.
So do you want me to just comment about this? Because it really is the
difference from the 71 to the 77 is that Dave George, the town planner's salary, is no longer coming from the planning board's revolving account. We'd like it to be included in the town budget.
correct. So let me explain.
Funding that through their revolving fund to help us keep a planner. And they've been very helpful with that, but they'd like to keep it now because they're starting to spend down that revolving fund.
Not really, no.
So let me, if you would, let me explain this, right? Because this is going to be a debate over a variety of different departments. So let's have it now. So I've had a lot of conversation with the town accountant about the way we've been using these revolving funds to pay salaries. And it does a couple of things. One, it's at least in mine and Dan's opinion, it's not very transparent because citizens can't necessarily see how we're funding positions. I think because of the history of Rutland with having tough budgets every year, Finance Committee and others have been looking for ways to find other sources of revenue to pay positions. And Dave's position was one of them. Dave is the full-time town planner. They couldn't get all the money in the general fund budget, so they asked for $5,000 to come out of the planning committee's 53G account. And, you know, it really doesn't tell the public at town meeting how much the town planner is being paid because it's in this revolving fund, $5,000. So what this budget proposes to do for this position and some others is to take $5,000 from the administrative revolving fund and putting it in as a revenue to the budget. So the $5,000 goes in as a revenue, and Dave's salary is fully funded from the general fund budget. And effectively, it's a wash. It doesn't cost the town money. It doesn't change anything. It just keeps that money from being funded out of a revolving account where it really doesn't belong anyway. Now, I had some discussions with Karen about this, and I understand her concern is that it's going to look like a big increase to David's salary, but it's really not. It's really the same salary he's entitled to and he's been getting.
Wasn't the one I was concerned with, Ron. I was
Well, also,
later ones. I
the
was not
nature of
concerned with
the nature of the discussion around this whole thing, it might eat up too much time and people might get absorbed in the conversation. And that's the thing. I mean, she's absolutely right that at town meeting, it could become a big discussion about this. I personally think it can be easily understood when you explain it. But me and Dan just basically feel that this is the right way to do it. And this will play into recreation department as well as we get into those departments. But Karen, why don't you, I know you have real legitimate concerns. Why don't you express your concerns that you expressed to me about this?
I don't have any concerns about this one. I will have those discussions at such time as we get to recreation and safe place, because those are where my concerns are.
Okay, because there's going to be there's going to be one other department. I think the building department, there's a minor adjustment like this. So I'm glad to hear that because at least we can resolve some of these accounts. But again, it's a wash. It doesn't really mean anything because there's added revenue in the budget and it washes out the added expense. But it's like I say, it's just to have everybody fully understand what the salary for the town planner is, and it's not hidden in any way. Everything else is just level funded. There's nothing else. You really just have the planning board wages is the only other item in the budget.
Okay, hold on one second. Tommy's got a question.
So how is it, can you explain it? You said it's a wash. How is it a wash?
Okay, so right now, the planning board administrative account gets money from a series of developers for work that they do, and it goes into this revolving fund. And then 5,000 of that actually gets paid to Dave's salary. Instead of giving Dave the 5,000 from that account, it'll be a revenue to the town. So you get the 5,000 will be taken out of the administrative account, go as a revenue to the town, and David will be paid $5,000 more from the general fund budget, which is just a wash. So it's a new $5,000 revenue and a new $5,000 expense, and it just adds up to zero.
Okay, I misunderstood. I was thinking you were saying the whole amount was gonna be a wash, but the.
No,
5,000
just the part of the salary that's in that.
Okay, thank you.
that administrative account. Yep. And I talked a lot with Norm about that. That's why Norm has referred it to me. I talked to Norm and Dave about this to understand. I wanted them and the planning board to be comfortable with what we were doing because the planning board sees that administrative account is to be utilized for their purposes. And they agreed to use this money for payroll. So that part they've agreed in the past. So now it just takes care of that. But other money, those revolving accounts are not supposed to be used for payroll. They're really supposed to be used for hiring consultants to review plans and things like that. And we really shouldn't use these kind of revolving funds to pick up pieces of payroll.
Well, it's not against any laws where it's just not good practice.
Right. You're absolutely right, Karen.
Okay, I'd just like to comment, very, very quickly on this, and I've noted this to Ron already. The one thing about these revolving accounts is that they are specific to one particular board, committee, or organization. And that organization is the only one that is authorized to spend that money from the revolving account. So I just want to make certain that we don't get to a point where the town, I'm just going to say the town, finds that this is, let's say, a cash cow that they can go dipping into for anything they want to. Okay, and very, very simply, as far as I'm concerned, all it needs is a vote of the planning board to say, yes, we will pay the $5,000. And we have no trouble doing it as long as it's needed.
So I would say, Norm, I would reply this way to you, right? I think the past and the way it was being done now is the town going to say, okay, we really should be paying Dave's payroll out of the general fund, but we're looking to use your administrative account money because you have it. This is exactly what you don't want to happen. So we're going to fix that. And going forward, you're correct. We should not use that administrative account planning come out. That's strictly for planning business as it revolves around things that the planning commission has to do around subdivisions and things like that.
Yeah. The original, there's nothing in writing, but the original idea when town planner was first hired was that the planning board would be paying a diminishing amount towards the salary of the town planner. At this point, that hasn't really worked out, but again, I guess I'll put it very bluntly, at least to the planning board and to myself, having the town planner is valuable enough to do whatever can be done to fund the salary. So, and I realize that's kind of personal, being on the planning board, but that's how I feel about it.
Any questions for Norm?
Madam Chair, may I just make a comment from the RDIC standpoint? If it weren't for the planner, we would be in deep mess when it comes to the project we're working on there. He's been absolutely instrumental in getting this thing moved forward. So I concur with Norm 300%. Would be in deep trouble without him. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you very much, Norm. Thank you,
Okay.
David.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay. So, all right, Ron, you're up.
Let's do Board of Appeals. Just to be clear, Board of Appeals, clerical is $350. I imagine it's probably Tamika again. Purchase services $300. Both are level funded for a budget of $650. Any questions on Board of Appeals?
Okay.
Agricultural, a whole $250, again, level funded from last year. And just so everybody knows, I called all the chairman of these boards and commissions and told them that we're level funding the budget. It's a tough budget year. We don't have a lot of money. Don't expect any increases. So there's going to be no surprise that their budgets are level funded, but 250 for agriculture. Again, in talking to these chairs, they use the money for advertising and things for particular meetings that they have to post them. That's the whole purpose of this money. Any question on agriculture?
Yeah, they haven't spent any money this year, so could, they
Yep.
spent $48.10 in 2020.
And they may not use it. I think it depends upon the issue at hand, Karen. So, I mean, you could cut it, but God, and then if they have any issue, they have nothing. So,
I'm not saying cut it to nothing, but we're looking for change in the couch cushions.
yeah, I don't care, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
It's up to you. I mean, it's not going to break the bank. If let's say they didn't have the money, we'd find somebody out of my budget or somebody's budget to make it work. But like I said, it's kind of small dollars, but.
Yeah, but Ron, at this
I
point,
know, you don't have to repeat. I get it. Any other questions on that budget? Let's go to town council. Kind of do these quick ones. That's the lawyer for the town. It's used for all kinds of things, departments and town activities. Whenever we have legal questions of HR, all those things, it's frankly extremely important that we have it. It's level funded again at $30,000. Truthfully, if you ask me truthfully, I think this account's low, but we're going to deal with it. We're not asking for any more money in it. This is one of those accounts that depends upon what happens legally through the year. And this is an item that if we have legal cases, we go to reserve or something to deal with it. But I should have asked for an increase at this point in time for that. I think it's low for union negotiations. I think there should be more money to union negotiations. I think the town has failed to do a good job with union negotiations because they haven't had any real representation, but sometimes not using legal fees costs you more money than using legal fees, but it is what it is. So that's level funded at 30 grand. Any questions on that? Okay.
Town network.
Wait a minute, can we go back 1 second, Karen?
Oh, sure. Sorry, Darren.
Ron, why do you have the interpretation that the town hasn't done well with negotiations with unions?
One of the problems with union contracts is that not only is the increase expensive, like, most people, when they look at union contracts, they say, okay, well, what's the COLA from year to year? 2% or whatever. Two of the contracts, at least, the dispatches got a pretty significant raise in dispatches in dispatch contract. Now, the argument was made to me, and I wasn't involved, and I don't doubt it's true, is it's very hard to find dispatchers these days. So they made, some significant increases in union contract to keep our dispatchers. And at least in the third year of the contract, it's a 3% raise. Most of the time I've been negotiating contracts with legal fees around 2%, keeping them down. They got 3%, DPW got 3%, but there's also costs involved in language costs. So when you write in certain things, they get, stipends and incentives and clothing allowances and all kinds of crap. I just think that probably we're a little bit too generous. And I'll say this, I've been a town manager for 25 years or in town government 25 years. I don't consider myself a labor law expert. And I think when town administrators try to be labor law experts, it usually costs the town a lot of money. I've come in behind these town administrators who try to negotiate contracts, don't know what they're doing. And invariably the contract costs a lot more than it should have. And they make mistakes in wording because labor unions use very experienced negotiators from the union organizations. They may not be lawyers, but they negotiate contracts every day of the week. And they can blow away most town managers and they can blow away regular attorneys. That's why a labor lawyer in negotiations is usually really important. It could cost you 5 to 10 grand, but the return on that investment, I think, is worth it. But some town managers would debate me on that issue, but I've come in enough after bad administrators who think they're smarter than they are. And I find contracts that need major work to try to fix stuff. Problem with union contracts is once you put it in, it's almost impossible to get it out. It's everything in Massachusetts, Connecticut has to go to arbitration, and towns don't do well in arbitration against unions because they're blue states and the arbitrators are always in favor of the unions. So once it's in, you live with it for an awful long time at whatever that cost is. So that's my general observation about this. Again, if you don't use lawyers, you do it so at your own risk, because you can make expensive mistakes if you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for the explanation. Appreciate it.
Any other question on legal stuff?
Nope.
Before we get into network, let's jump back to reserve fund?
No, let's do the town network because the reserve fund we're all very well aware of.
Okay, I was just gonna get rid of it because the network's a little more complicated, that's all.
Yeah, but that's where the discussion gets, as we get later in the evening, it's easy.
All right, that's fine. Let's do network. Network is with phones, but give me a minute to find my spot in my budget book. Animal control, traffic, education. How can I find it? Oh, here it is, right in front of me. Open your eyes. Okay. So let's start. There's two components here, network and phones. And the phones were originally in the network account. So when you look at the network account, last year's budget was $48,860. And you'll see this year's is $43,597. And when I came in, it was explained to me that Michael had made some changes here. And I guess it was kind of a mess with the phones. And I thought the impression was that there was going to be some savings as a result of changing phone companies. But when both Laura and Aaron went through it, they didn't find any savings. They actually found increased costs. But I guess it did improve the phone systems from what you used to have. So if you look at the $48,860, we took $8,500 of money from the phone account out of that $48,860, and we moved that to phones, which we're going to do next, right? So the $8,500 came out, but Michael had negotiated a deal with Charter. It was a 3-year promotional price of $450 a month. And that promotion ends, so it's gonna go up to $900 a month, which means that the Charter increase is gonna be $2,700. So we took out $8,500, but it goes up by $2,700 because of this promotional deal that saved the town money for a while, but the promotion ended. Also, there were other minor increases from CM Geeks, which is our IT firm that does all of our IT work, of an additional $537. So that's how the account you'll see is goes from 71,520 down to 66,815. So in this account, you'll see the savings, but in the phone account, when we get to it, you're going to see the increase where the phones were moved. Any questions on this network account first?
Have we re-investigated, gone out to bid to see if we can get, some quotes to see if CM Geeks is, competitive, thank you, competitive, because we've had them for a while. And I know in my line of work, we usually go out every few years to make sure that we're keeping them honest.
So Karen, the answer is, at least in the 4 months I've been here, no. So it's something I would have to look at and see. I don't know what the term of the contract we have with them is. So I'm gonna have to look at their contract and see what the term is. They the price really didn't go up for their services this year. So it's level, it's pretty level what they had. Just like I say, those costs went up because of the Charter contract. But the cost for CM Geeks didn't go up, but I will take a look and see if we have a contract and what the term of that is, and see if it is time to relook at that. I'll say this to you, been pretty happy with their services. They're very responsive to any questions and computer problems. They did a great job in putting together a capital improvement budget when I asked them for it. They have a whole schedule. They showed me a whole schedule of all the IT hardware that we have and what their time schedule for changes are. So I will say everything I've seen since I've been here has been pretty professional. So I can't say I'm unhappy with the service, but I'll take a look at the contract and see what it says. So the second part of it is the next page, which is the telephone centrics. This is where the 8,500 for the phone lines got kicked back in. So it went from 6,000 to 14,500. And that's really now we have all the phones where they rightfully should be under the telephone account. So IT service, CM Geeks, all those services are network, and all the telephone stuff is now in this account. That explains it. The reason I say this was more complicated, it was a royal pain in the tail trying to figure this out, because we had to get together a lot of past bills and figure out what was going on here, because it was pretty disorganized in terms of it. And like I said, I talked to some of the selectmen because I was trying to get a handle on this myself. And they said that they really weren't expecting a savings from this transfer from one phone system to another, but improved services. I guess the service in the past, as it related to phones, was pretty bad. So I don't know if I was just kind of told about the promotional thing that Mike had worked on or what. I don't know what the perception of the finance committee was, but I did get from the Board of Selectmen that they didn't really think there was going to be any savings in changing over. But again, I don't know.
Well, with our old phone system, I don't believe we would have been able to do as well through the pandemic, because I don't think we would have been able to have transferred phones as easily as we were able to do during the pandemic.
Yeah, you may be right. I wasn't here, so I don't know what the phone system looked like, but I guess it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was all wired. That's it.
So that's that. Where do you want to go? Reserve next, Karen?
Town
Accounting? Okay, so the town accountant, and this is another discussion that kind of me and Karen have been having, and I had some brief conversation with Dan. So the $30,000 in the accountant services is the same as last year, it's level funded. This is essentially the cost of Dan. The reason me and Karen have had some discussion, she asked me a pretty legitimate question. When I came here, Dan was talking about retiring, and I talked to Dan and asked Dan if he would please stay to give me the first year through annual town meeting in the budget process, because I wasn't familiar with their budget process. And I wanted to make sure I had somebody dependable I could have in the accounting department to kind of work me through the first year. I'd be a lot much more comfortable now that I've done the budget process essentially once going forward into next year, but I wanted Dan to stay on board, and he agreed to do that. after the town meeting, me and Dan agreed that we would look at, I would look at getting somebody else. Originally, I had a town accountant who actually lives in Rutland, who does some part-time work for another town, come to me and say he was interested in a position, and I put him off because Dan was gonna stay a while. I talked to Dan about this 30 grand, and frankly, I think the account's too low, and I think Karen, in our conversations, you probably think this number's too low for a town accountant. And I asked Dan about it, and he figures it will cost us more too. We don't know yet. What I'm gonna have to do in the next month is kind of go out to other town managers, administrators, and send an email out to my group and ask them what they pay for their town accountant. But I'd be willing to bet that this number could go up to 50 or 60 grand. But I don't know the number yet, but before we get to town meeting, we've got to harden and try to figure out what Dan's replacement would cost us. So it's something we're gonna have to look at.
Well, I can say from my standpoint of sitting on the finance committee, I think it's a better idea to get out there and start going out for bid for this so that they have some time to
Yeah.
learn from Dan. Because we have a lot of quirky things that we do here that the town has been used to Dan doing, and I wouldn't want somebody just to get thrown in and not have any time with Dan to learn how the quirkiness of Rutland is.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. Wouldn't, just to be clear and technically right, it's not going out to bid. We would be asking for requests for quotes if we were going to, there's two ways to go about this. We could hire a part-time accountant, which would be essentially like hiring an employee, or we could go out to companies that would be something like Dan's and ask for requests for quotes to get prices for what it would cost to do Rutland. Invitation to bid would be for not professional services, for other things. But the answer is yes, we have to find out what it's going to cost us, be it a town employee, a part-time town employee, or hiring a company as a vendor. We have to get that number. Okay, anyway, any questions? I mean, that's something I'm going to work on, and I'll be in touch with Karen and the board about what the potential number should be with this. And again, I did talk to Dan, and he wasn't sure how much either. I asked him how much work he did. And it was hard for him to kind of put this down to hours, it depends upon what's going on. But me and Dan will work on this. And Dan, to his credit, he's been phenomenal with me and willing to work with me. So I don't think he'll leave without helping us transition.
I'm sure, but he also wants to retire.
Yeah, he does. Yep. So audit purchase services.
Hold on one second, because we have, Ted's gonna.
So if I understand this correctly, Dan is retiring in this coming year?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
this
after town
number
meeting.
could potentially double.
Could be. I don't know, but it could be.
And do we need to try and be prepared for that?
Before town meeting, my guess is we will be changing this number as I do some homework and find out what a more realistic number is going to be. Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna research that, and that number's probably gonna go up to 50 or 60 in the next month.
Well, I would say, that's why I say I would highlight this number as something we have to look at before we finally make a recommendation at town meeting. So yes. Any other questions about that? Okay, you guys all know that we're required to have an annual audit that is level funded at 23,500. You'll see OPEB, actuarial study, that's done every 2 years, required by law. So that's in, and there's a $250 increase that Dan put in to have the OPEB study done. I don't think that's anything to worry. I mean, $250 for an increase for that is probably, I think it's fine. The town financial software, 2021, we actually paid, it's budgeted for 5,400. Dan says we actually paid 5,705. So we're adding $685 to this. He thinks that's a reasonable amount of money for the SoftWrite software that we use and the increase of the cost of the software. All of this is in your budget book in his narrative. But he thinks it reflects a more honest increase and it makes the it more real, I guess he's saying more aligned with the fiscal year 2021 at 5,705. So nothing crazy here, pretty realistic, pretty logical. And the next two line items are level funded. Town accountant supplies and town accountant others level funded. Any other questions about the town accountant budget? Dan put the budget together and the narrative together. So it came directly from Dan, and he's more than realistic, I think.
Any other questions? Okay,
Okay, reserve fund is the last one, I think. $25,000 is the standard amount we use for reserve fund. You know, this is the catch-all. Something breaks and we don't expect it, you know, legal case comes in and it's more than we want. This is the way we balance the budget. If something unexpected occurs, it's actually a pretty low reserve fund, but it is what it is. And if you did run short on reserve and you didn't have enough money, that's when you go to the last resort, which is the stabilization fund. Or again, we could transfer between accounts at the end of the year. There's a variety of ways we try to utilize before we ever went to the stabilization account. But the reserve it's our contingency account for God knows what might happen throughout the year. Any questions about reserve?
nope.
Where would I find how much is in there for totals right now?
Well, right now in your budget books, at the front of your budget books, I gave you a bunch of sheets that are the expenses to date in every account. Karen has been referring to it a couple of times tonight.
We have
So-
$24,820 left in the account currently. We spent $180.
Yeah, the reserve account is usually the account of last resort. So it's always usually used at the unless there's a big emergency, it's always used at the end of the year to balance the budget when some line items, let's say police overtime was more than you thought it was going to be. At the end of the year, when you start clearing your accounts to try to equalize the budget at the end of the year, that's where you usually tap the reserve account if there was no emergencies throughout the year. You know what I mean?
Understood. I found it.
Yeah, if you had a bridge problem or some problem that ate reserve in the middle of the year, it eats reserve. But most of the time, if no major problem occurs, this is the fund that helps balance the budget at the end of the year. If you had, you had to transfer money from reserve to overtime or reserve to some account that's was underfunded.
Correct.
Hopefully that was helpful. Can I ask a question that we're going to adjourn, I think, shortly? Have you guys found the budget books to be very informative and pretty well organized? Can you follow them pretty well?
Yes, everybody here is very happy with them.
Okay, I just want to make sure because my staff worked really hard. I would ask that you treat them kindly because I want you to give them back to me at the end of the year. I don't want to have to create all these tabs and everything for next year. So please treat these with kid gloves because at the end of the year, I want them all back. So I don't want to have my staff redo all the work to create this budget. So please make sure you take care of them. Now, I wanted to say in the beginning of this, I had a meeting with my department heads today. And the purpose was based upon some discussions we had at previous meetings. I asked my department heads for three things. And I don't agree with any of them, just for the record, but we don't have any choice. The first is that I want them to back out of the budgets that they presented to us any step increases for employees. And I think there's maybe 5 or 6 employees that actually got step increases. The step increases are because the Board of Selectmen many years ago set up a classification schedule to allow employees who are in their first 4 years of employment to get step increases. The purpose of this is that usually when you start at a low salary and the step increases help you move up a little faster to help entice you to stay with the town for a long period of time. That's usually what steps are for. And it's your learning time where you're learning the new job. So that's the purpose of steps. So that is also in every union contract, this step process. So of course, the Board of Selectmen created that and put it into the non-union employees as well. This year became very controversial for me because in the past, we didn't follow this schedule, and it's in the back of your book. In the back of your budget book in the sleeve part, I put that classification schedule in for you guys so you can see what it looked like. By not following it, it causes chaos. I've had some department heads that have been there for 15 years that are still on step 2, which doesn't make sense because after 4 years, you should be out of this step process. It's only good for the first 4 years. Or if you change your classification, if you move from one job to another, you might get back into the step process for those 4 years. So that step process is completely out of whack for non-union employees because we gave steps, we didn't give steps, and it just, the whole schedule is it is what it is. But I understand why it happened, but it's caused a mess of that schedule. This year, I took a lot of heat from some department heads because I only gave steps, not to people who were on step 2s or step 3s, but only if you were here and it was your first 4 years of employment and you should be on the step schedule. Those are the only employees who got steps. So all new employees, 4 or 5 people got in the step process. If you were a department head and you didn't get a step 3, 5 years ago like you were supposed to, sorry, you're not getting a step anymore. You're done with the step system. And believe me, more than one department head had unkind words to me about that process, but I had to find some way to still make it work, and that's what I did. So the first thing I asked department heads is to, because I know that finance board doesn't have a lot of choices here, to work out those 5 employees or so that have steps and to show us what the savings would be if we don't give them the steps. Number 2, all the COLAs for the non-union staff, I asked them to take out of their budgets and show us the savings for those cuts. The reason I hate this even more is because a lot of non-union people have contracts. The police chief, the fire chief, the dispatch director, the treasurer. There's probably 5 or 6 department heads that have contracts. And then there's other department heads that are non-union with no contract. So the only 2% COLA you can cut is those non-union employees who don't have a contract. So for instance, you can't cut the treasurer's salary. You can't take her step away because it's in her contract. But you could take it away from the library director. So the library director wouldn't get the 2% COLA, but the treasurer, police chief, fire chief, all those get raises. It's very unfair, and it's an illogical system, but that's what I've asked for, because you kind of are in a situation where we have to make cuts, and where do we go? And in theory, you at least can make the recommendation to cut these areas, right? Is it fair? Is it right? No, but I get the problem. Where else do you go? That's number 2. Number 3, I asked all the department heads, and I'm going to qualify this to say department heads of non-revolving fund accounts, because we're trying to cut the general fund budget. Cable and recreation have nothing to do with it because they're revolving fund accounts. It's not going to, if we cut those departments, it ain't going to change the deficit. So those departments that are general fund departments, I've asked them to provide me with a 5% cut after they take out the steps, after they take out the COLAs, that I want them to give me recommendations for how they would cut their budget by 5%. And this was based upon the conversation we had at the last finance board meeting. I'm going to provide all this information to you guys. And you know, it's interesting. I hate to say that those 3 items are not going to add up to a lot of money, but as Karen says, we need every dollar we can get, right? So you're going to see those numbers, but they aren't even going to come close to cut the deficit that I sent you today of $700 and something thousand, right? So it's going to look awfully small. And I said to my department heads, we're going 5%. That's a big cut for us. That might mean staffing or whatever for our departments. It may very well, but that's going to be the easiest 5% they have to cut if we try to cut $700,000 from the town budget. So anyway, I'm going to get that information. I'm going to give it to you. Doesn't mean that I agree that this is what we should do, but you've asked for that information, and I want to provide you with all parts of this discussion so you can make the best decisions you can. I also sent, I'm also looking at, let's say, and have information on if it comes down to it, the town has to propose some kind of override. Let's assume in the 700,000, let's assume we cut 250,000 or whatever it might be. The only other option is to, if the school groups come and they support a town meeting and they vote for the school budget, the only other option, if you can't cut 700 grand, is to have some type of override. So I want, at least for right now, I want the lead officials to understand what that potential override would cost taxpayers, the average taxpayer. So I've asked the assessor to give me what a average taxpayer would, an average taxpayer in Rutland, the house would be somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000. But to tell me what the override would be at various amounts. So if we cut the budget some and we have to bring forward an override, at least we know what the hell we're talking about and what those numbers are. So I'm working on that, and that's really just, I'm going to keep that number close to the vest until we actually come out to what we're talking about in terms of, you know, after what cuts we make, what deficit we have left to deal with, right? So I just want you to know that as far as I'm concerned, my role is to give you guys all the tools and the information you need so that you can make the best recommendation possible at town meeting. So hopefully that's helpful, but I honestly, I don't believe there's a chance in hell that we can cut the town without destroying the town budget of making up a $700,000 deficit just on the small departments that we could cut from. I don't know how you can do that. It's just huge without literally destroying your police department, fire department, libraries. I mean, the cuts are just astronomical. So in my own personal opinion, at some point in time, like it or not, there's going to have to at least be some discussion about cuts and some type of override. But again, that at the end of the day is your decision, but I think we're going to be talking about that at the end of this process.
Well, like we spoke, we're going to be doing iterations of the budget. One with all the cuts, one if we decide to do this. There's several different things that we go to the town meeting floor with. It's not just one and done. There's several different iterations that happen.
Karen, I was explaining to my department heads today, because I had a department head meeting and I explained all of this to them. And I did so for a couple of reasons. One is they need to understand what happens if the school system rallies up the teachers and votes this thing through. The increase that they currently have through a town meeting, it's going to have a huge effect on the town side of the budget, huge. And I think the employees have a right to know that and be prepared for what it means to them when they go to town meeting. And I'm going to have that same meeting with my union leaders tomorrow, letting them know what the potential impact could be of this being, the school system passing this kind of increase. Because I think that the parties have a right to know how they approach it at town meeting is their business, but I think they have a right to know that this could have a negative effect on all their departments and in fact on staff. So they understand what's going on here. The union leaders will understand what's going on here and what the end outcome is important. Now, my last comment is I think because in past years, they've always seemed to be a way that they've kind of resolved this without getting big hits. I think that's less likely this year because of the $405,000 deficit from last year. Because if we didn't have that deficit from last year, our problem would be in the $270,000, $280,000 range or something like that. But when you add the 405 from last year, that's how it becomes, in my mind, unresolvable through just cuts. But that's why this year, I think, is harder to fix than in previous years, unless the state comes through with hundreds of thousands of dollars more in revenue than we expect, but I think we both think that's unlikely.
Revenue number, did you use $150,000 of free cash?
Well, we don't have any free cash right now. So we would have to literally pass a budget that was unbalanced. And at the fall town meeting, when the new cash was certified, then add in some money of free cash.
So we have no free cash available at this time.
40 or 50 grand, right? Isn't that what we left at the special town meeting? Remember? It wasn't that much. 50 grand, 60, it wasn't hundreds of thousands. It was less than 100 grand somewhere. And Peter makes a point about the wood roof. We have to fix the roof of the Woods building because if we don't deal with it, we're gonna have water damage to that roof and it's gonna be a lot worse. So whatever's in free cash, I'm thinking that we're gonna have to fix that damn Woods building, right? Otherwise, it's gonna cost us more than not fixing it. So
typically,
we're in a bind.
Typically, we use $150,000 from free cash to go into the budget as revenue to help balance the budget. That's in our financial and debt policies that we all signed as Finance Committee and Select Board. Last year, we did increase it to $200,000. And then we did expect that the government was going to allow us to use CARES Act funding to use for operational budget.
Even if that was true, Karen, that would still create a $200,000 deficit because CARES funding is a one-time revenue. So that doesn't solve anything. That just makes the problem bigger for next year.
I get it, but it's no different than the ESSER 2 funds. It's no different than a lot of the funds that are coming through. The fact of the matter is, we've always done that. So I can't speak for the board, but we've always used free cash to help balance the, at least help add, to help get closer to a smaller number. So I'm thinking that free cash might be needed to try to, I don't know, save some sort of service. I don't know. What do you guys all think?
I don't know either. Again, it would have to go in, the way I understand it right now, It's a special town meeting, whatever free cash number we thought we were gonna use wouldn't be certified until the fall. So we would bring an unbalanced budget into town meeting in summer and then add the free cash later, because you can't spend free cash you don't have.
You'll need to speak with Dan on exactly how they do it, but we have used free cash to balance the budget at town meeting, at our annual town meeting.
Then you must have had free cash to do it with, but we don't now, so.
Well, we do, we have $40,000 or $50,000. That's
And
better
that
than
you could-
nothing.
And that you could put in the annual town meeting, but you can't put more than you have in the annual town meeting because you don't have it.
I understand that.
Right, so I know in the past you might have had it, but we don't have it this year.
I think, you know, the thing is, if we're gonna go and use, oh, sorry, I hear my own echo. And if we're gonna go with the override, we gotta get it as low as possible so the override doesn't hurt as least as much as it could.
Agreed. That's why I'm
But in
hoping,
the end, Ron, the thing is, yeah, but in the end, we still have to do all the contingencies. So one, because we can't assume that the override, if we decide to go that route, it will pass. So we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario.
even more so, Karen, to that point, I think in order to have any chance of passing the override, we have to show taxpayers what they're gonna lose if they don't vote for it. So those cuts have to be there where the taxpayers go, hell, if we don't vote for this override, then we're gonna cut police officers, we're gonna cut firemen, we're gonna cut DPW workers. The library's not gonna be open every day, the senior center's not gonna be open, whatever. I mean, that's the only way you're gonna get people to vote for an override if they understand what it is they're gonna cut. Now, that all assumes that two towns don't vote down the school budget, which is, who knows, unlikely, right? But in theory, it could happen, right?
In theory, it could happen.
That's why I'm explaining to my employees and the town unions why it's important that they understand that. And that they should be, if the school system riles up the school employees, then town employees should be somewhat of a counter force to that discussion because it's going to impact them, right?
Mhm.
They need to know that.
I agree.
That's all I had, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted you guys to kind of have a feeling for the overall picture, at least the way I see it. And again, I'm no expert here, but that's my common sense theory of where we are at this moment.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
You have to.
Sorry about that. You gotta find me here someplace.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Karen, I didn't
Peter
think,
made the motion to adjourn.
okay,
I second.
thank you.
Okay, and now we're gonna take a roll call vote. So Peter,
Aye.
Tommy,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Ted,
Purcell, I.
Darren,
Ross, aye.
and Narwhal says yes too, so it's unanimous to adjourn at 7:49 PM.